Hello, everybody. On this week's Sportlight Podcast, First Lady of Utah, Abby Cox.
I truly believe that programs like yours, programs like the Special Olympics Unified Sports can change the world. It literally can change the world.
Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight Podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast. We are honored today to be joined by the First Lady of Utah, Abby Cox. And so, Abby, thank you so much for taking the time today to join us on the Sportlight Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
We are very excited to see all that you're doing throughout the state with an initiative you call Show Up Utah and getting athletes and others to show up and make a difference in their community. And as you know, that just goes hand in hand with what we do, especially for athletes. In fact, I've heard in other podcasts that you've done that you've had the opportunity to run into many who call themselves E4A athletes as you've been doing that. And it seems like a great partnership and a great thing that we could do together. And so we appreciate having you on and talking about these things that we both seem to be passionate about.
Yeah, we run into people all over the state that are in this program and that are working really hard. Athletes, it's my favorite thing to do is to go be around kids in school because they just have a light that's amazing and it's really cool to see. And our athletes tend to be a lot of our leaders in our school, so it's fun to run into them and see their light.
Well, we want to talk to you. You are a former athlete, if I understand correctly. You were an athlete at the great North Sanpete High School. You were a Hawk there. And tell us what sports you played growing up in high school.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in a small town in Mount Pleasant, Utah. North Sanpete actually turned 3A when I was a senior. So we were 2A most of the time. So pretty small, but when you have a small school, you get a lot of opportunities. So to do a lot of different things, which is really fun. I grew up in a family of 10 kids, 8 girls and 2 boys. So me and my sisters, my dad played football at Weber State and just loved football, loved everything sports, basketball. We played everything. And he wanted 11 kids so he could have a football team. And he got 10 and he got 8 girls and 2 boys. So we grew up, me and my sisters were not dancers, not that there's anything wrong with dancers. That's great athletics too. But we were told we were athletes. We were told that this was the opportunities we were given. It was so important to my dad to play football, I played everything when I was a kid. He would get us up at like 5 a.m. and take us down to the church gym. And we would play basketball and then we'd throw pass patterns and it was a great way to grow up. So when I get to high school, I watched my older sisters play volleyball and basketball and run track and all the things. So I kind of followed in those footsteps. When I was in my younger years in high school, I played volleyball and track and ran track. And then all through high school until my senior year, I played basketball. So basketball is probably still the love, the sport that I love. But as I got older, my husband was a tennis player. So when he went on his mission, I learned how to play tennis at Snow College. I took a class because I wanted to be able to play with him. And now he and I have taken up golf, and all the sports that are lifetime sports, anything I can be outside playing, I do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a father of all girls, and my daughter is graduating from Snow College this week.
Oh, go Badgers. I was a Badger as well. Yeah.
And she's been a Badgerette down there dancing on the Badgerette dance team. And I have another dancer going to Southern Utah University on the dance team. And so dance has been a huge part of my life. But then my last daughter Clara is a tennis player. And
Okay.
so I get a little bit of sport in my life. But that's really awesome,
And
Abby. And
dancers are incredible athletes.
they are. And those drill girls throughout our state, I don't know if there's a hardworking group of people in the world than our drill girls throughout the
That
state.
is absolutely true. I had a niece that did drill all at North Stampede. She's a Badgerette actually right now. So yeah, it's amazing.
Well, she's teammates with my daughter then. That's awesome. What's her name?
Cambry.
Cambry, okay. Yeah. So she knows my daughter Emma. So that's awesome. I've met Cambry before. Good. That's awesome. So one of our focuses, and especially for athletes, is to try to be intentional as we talk to parents and coaches, and of course the tens of thousands of athletes we speak to around the state of Utah every year, and down into Nevada and Idaho, and whoever will listen to us. We try to be intentional about helping them learn life's lessons through sports. And I'm just curious to ask you, what are some of the most important lessons sports taught you as you grew up and competed? It doesn't really matter the size. It doesn't matter if it's a 2A school or a 6A school. Those lessons are as powerful in 2A as they are in 6A. I'm wondering, what are some of the most important lessons that sports taught you as you competed growing up?
Well, I think, again, based on my family, that was just kind of, we were kind of expected that's what we do. And that's a really good thing. But you also have to, as an athlete, you have to find your own way too, which I think is really important. And it can be frustrating at times, but the lessons I learned, especially as I started playing basketball in middle school, that's where I found friends. That's where I learned that when you work together, you're going to be a lot better. That when you have good chemistry as a team, you're gonna move forward in bigger and better ways. When you're playing sports, there's just all these lessons of hard work. Look, I grew up on a farm, so playing basketball was like a rest. So I loved going to basketball games. I loved the relationships. I loved competing. I think the coaches that I had, especially my middle school coaches, saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and really encouraged me to be on the team, to compete. And I found that, as the other really important lesson that I learned is there were a lot of girls on my team that I wouldn't have known had I not played on the team. Mm-hmm. And I think getting to know somebody that has a different story than you do, maybe, you think they're the cool kid and you're not, or vice versa, or whatever. All of a sudden you start to get to know people on your team that you would never have known otherwise. And it just brings all different walks of life together. And to me, that was really powerful, learning that, preconceived notions about maybe a middle school girl, and how it is in middle school. It's rough out there. A preconceived notion of what this middle school girl was and who she was, and then getting to play on the team, getting proximate to her, understanding her story, learning about her family, and then just seeing like, we're not so different, we're not as different as I thought. And we can be friends, even though I thought we were so completely different.
I think that's one of the greatest things sports does for us. We had Chad Lewis speak at one of our summits recently. We've been going around the state and doing these large summits. And he talked about the locker room that you imagine you're in the Philadelphia Eagles locker room, and here's this kid from Orem, Utah, who went to BYU, and then now he's surrounded by people from all over the country. And I know for me, Abby, that was one of the greatest lessons sports taught me too. I grew up in LA County before I came up here and went to college in Provo. And I had teammates, all colors, all backgrounds, some with fathers, some without. Just economically, our high school was very diverse economically. We had wealthy kids, and we had kids who were on government assistance, and I learned that I loved every single one of them. And they are, to this day, some of my best friends in the world, which I think sports is this little microcosm of our society. If we could all just let those things that we treat as important melt away and got to know one another, I think our society would be a way better place, and sports is a great place to learn that.
I totally agree.
You know, one of the things we talk a lot about is resilience. Right now, we live in a time where our young people especially are dealing with a lot of mental health struggles, depression and anxiety. Suicide rates are increasing at a very alarming and concerning rate. I would just be curious to ask you, what have you learned about the principle of resilience and responding to difficulty because of participating in sports?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a moment in time that is really unprecedented with the mental health struggles that our kids are facing. There's a lot of research, and my husband and I have been really vocal about the research, and you can just, we're starting to really coalesce around this idea of social media being one of the huge culprits for the problem of mental health with our young people. So, and adults too. I'm here to say, like, even young adults and older adults are struggling with mental health because of social media. Now, I'm not going to blame everything on social media, but there are ways that sports really does counterbalance that problem. I mean, when instead of looking online and seeing what's going on with friends and people you don't even know, and comparing yourself to whatever, or just hitting those algorithms where you can hit a really low point because those algorithms are sending you down these rabbit holes. I mean, the addictive properties are real, absolutely real in this. So I think sports, athletics, being outside, I mean, even if we think of, I played traditional sports, and a lot of us do, and maybe a lot of your listeners that play traditional sports are in that arena. But I mean, just being outside, just, having moments of away from social media, and really just putting those kind of things away to play a sport, to be outside or in a gym, or whatever that looks like for you. But we know that there are some real physiological things that go on with our bodies when we're playing sports. We know that those endorphins and the things that chemically make us happy are released when we are being active and playing and working out and working hard and being outside in the sunshine. It does incredible things for our brains that counteract that. The other thing which I love E4A about is there is a lot of research around volunteerism and those same types of chemical reactions in our brains. These are also releasing, those happy hormones. It's when we're serving other people, there's been some studies that are starting to link volunteerism and service with decreases in mental health problems. We're starting to see that medication and service and volunteerism actually are doing about the same thing. So we would love to see our athletes, and what you're doing is so powerful, because we would love to see those athletes get out of their own head, get out of their own concerns, and really start to focus on other people around them. That's why with Show Up Utah, and our focus on unified sports is a huge part of what we're doing, because it does help our athletes and other people to focus on others, not themselves. Yeah. And I think even our athletes, as much as we want to believe that they're working hard, and so that all these things are going to be good, our athletes are struggling too. Our athletes are having mental health struggles. Our athletes are having problems with social media. And what we're seeing is, like, if we can just put that aside, if we can start to really focus on other people through volunteerism, through service, it's really a powerful tool for our youth.
We agree, Abby. That's why we love having you on this show. We love what you're doing with Show Up Utah. We love any groups like that we can collaborate with and work together and say, how can we get more of our young people participating? You may have known about this, but down here in Spanish Fork, we did a Christmas meal program, and we challenged the kids. We got a leadership council of our two rival schools, Spanish Fork and Maple Mountain, and we brought them together and we said, instead of competing on the field, do you think we can work together to compete against hunger this Christmas? And the kids are like, let's do it. And so we said, okay, if we can earn $2,000, then we can feed 100 families a really nice Christmas meal. And this kid from Spanish Fork stood up and said, can I just say something? And he turned around to the group. I wish it was like a movie. I felt like I was in a movie. But he said, guys, I just did the math. If each of us got like this many friends to donate $5, we could feed 100 families. Do you realize how easy that is? We could do way more than that. This is like, I'm sorry to say this, Shad, but this is a lame goal. We need to feed more families. So they earn so much money together just by going to their friends, not by going to businesses, just going to fellow athletes and saying, can you help us feed hungry families at Christmas? They earned so much money that our biggest challenge was finding enough families. And we were able to feed 150 families. And they came together the day Christmas got out. So instead of going off on vacations and everything else, they came together that first day of Christmas break. We filled the gym at Spanish Fork. We brought in the food. They assembled the bags, and then they got in cars with their rival school. So it was all Maple Mountain and Spanish Fork kids in each school. And they went and delivered the meals to the families. And to see the joy in that gym, if we can come together, groups like, especially for athletes, Show Up Utah, and just come together and say, let's spread this, because like you said, it has been shown that by thinking outside of yourself, living arrows out instead of arrows in, it will help these young people deal with some of the struggles that are just inherent in their day. And so we appreciate that.
Love that. And honestly, we've watched these projects going on and just been so blown away by the generosity of our youth. But people get all upset about the youth and the things that are going on. And I always tell people they're so much better than we are. They're so much better. We did a project last fall where we had teams all over the state post about, do a service project and then send it to us. And we honored them at a Jazz game, and the Utah Jazz were really great to celebrate, all the teams and what they were doing. And it's that, Utah's been known for, we've been the highest ranked for volunteerism, highest ranked for charitable giving for a long time. And we want that to continue. It has to be intentionally taught, and it has to be intentionally modeled for our students so that it's not just assumed that they're going to pick this up or do this. And so I think as adults in their lives, it's really important for us to model that behavior. I love what you did about putting the rival schools together. My whole mantra with Show Up is get proximate to somebody that has a different story than you do. Get proximate to somebody you think you disagree with. What happens usually is that we really are not that far off. And, my husband and I are working really hard. He'll be the chair of the National Governors Association in July. And the initiative that he's going to put forward and that we're going to put forward together is really going to be all around disagreeing better. It's about healthy conflict. We are going to have conflict. You're going to have two teams that come from rival schools, and they're going to think their team's the best, and they're going to think their city's the best. But when they come together, they realize, what, these are people that I love. These are people that I can serve with. These are people that I really don't have that much difference, but there's so much that we have in common. And that's the model for, I think this generation can be the model for our entire society to say, you know what, all those stupid things don't matter. What matters is our human experience. What matters is that we come together. We may disagree on things. We may vehemently disagree on things, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends. And that doesn't mean we can't find the places where we connect.
Yeah, we preach often. You can love someone that you disagree with. And you can love someone that you compete against. In fact, one of our favorite quotes to share as we present to these thousands of youth, we put up a quote by G.K. Chesterton, and he said, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. That love is a way better motive in our life than hate, and too much in our society and politics and everything else. I know you know this better than anyone maybe, but too much is trying to be driven. We're trying to motivate people by hate and by fear and by opposition instead of being motivated by love and by principles that we hold dear to our heart. And if we can use sport to teach our young people that to make love their fuel, not hate. You don't have to hate that team to play hard. You could play hard for the name on your chest. You could play hard for the name on your back. You could play hard because you love the fans that are cheering for you, that you don't want to let down. You do not even have to concentrate on the opposition to be motivated. And I think that's such an important principle, and how cool that you and your husband, as you go to that convention, are spreading that message, because our world could sure use it. And we're trying to share it with our athletes, because they can learn it. Sports can teach them to do that.
Absolutely.
You know that we believe in something. It's the name of our podcast, the Sportlight Podcast, that these athletes, whether it's a 1A school or the Utah Jazz, these athletes have what we call the spotlight. It's the extra attention that's given to an athlete because they play sports, because they wear the jersey. Chad Lewis, speaking at our summit, he calls it the power of the jersey. And we love to just flip a switch in the brains of athletes to do what we've already been talking about, which is to use their position as an athlete to intentionally lift and help those around them. And I would just love to know your thoughts on athletes' ability to make a difference in their community.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but I will say that when I've been going through and visiting these different schools, and I'll go back to a little bit about what Unified Sports is. Unified Sports is a program of the Special Olympics, and it's where athletes that have intellectual disabilities and athletes that do not, that are typically developing, come together and play on teams together. It's absolutely phenomenally beautiful. And usually these partner athletes are they may be playing on a unified soccer team, but they may be the captain or star of their lacrosse team, or the basketball team, and maybe they're playing whatever it is, and they're playing on these teams together. What I've seen is the leadership of those typically developing peers playing on this team with their friends with all different abilities. Is that leadership is powerful. That is not only changing the lives of our friends with all different abilities, but that is changing their lives as leaders. And what we're seeing is when we go to these schools and they start implementing unified sports, we are seeing an entire cultural shift in the school. In the whole culture of the school is changed to one of inclusion, one of love, one of connection, one of joy. And schools are hard. Sometimes it's really hard. We've all been there. we've gone through this experience called, adolescence, and there's a lot going on at that time. But what we're seeing, and going back to the mental health and those leaders doesn't exempt them from mental health struggles. And we were talking to, we had a panel where we had some parents of the athletes that were on our teams talking about their experiences with their students. And it's so powerful to listen to these parents. So there was a mom, and she was talking about her child that was her typically developing student. And he was really struggling with some mental health issues. He had been a star athlete, but had an injury and had been sidelined, and was just, it was the pity party. It was the feeling sorry for himself. That was leading to some mental health struggles, some depression, some anxiety, the things that we're seeing a lot of. He was in the midst of that after this, this injury. And so he got kind of recruited and decided to come play on this unified team with his partner athlete. And his mom, just in tears, talked about the significant change in this kid's mental health, in this kid's outlook on life, and just the complete turnaround in what he was experiencing. And it's because, our friends that have different abilities have a unique spirit. It's the reason I became a special education teacher. I grew up with 3 of my dearest friends had Down syndrome. And they taught me what love is. They taught me what friendship really means. They taught me what joy really looks like, what unconditional acceptance looks like. And that's what we're seeing with Unified Sports, is we're seeing these leaders in our schools coming together and really elevating other people that have never been seen as leaders, who have never been seen as friends. I will say one other thing, a giant plug for Unified Sports. There was another experience of a student that I talked to. He was a former student. He had graduated from high school. And I was talking to him, and he said, I was asking him about his experience. I said, what was your experience in high school? Were you bullied? Said, no, I wasn't bullied. And he had a physical disability. He didn't have an intellectual disability, but he was kind of explaining his experience to me. And he said, I wasn't really bullied. He said, but, people were friendly. That's what he said. People were friendly, which was great. I'm thinking that's great, And then he says to me, there were times when my mom and I would make cookies, and I would sit on my front porch with a sign that said, will you be my friend? And that literally broke my heart. I mean, I was just crying, thinking of my child being that person sitting on the porch asking if somebody will be his friend. And what he said to me, and I will never forget this, and I've repeated it 100 times. He said to me, people are friendly, but they weren't my friend. Mm. And what I'm seeing is with these leaders, these athlete leaders, when they start to participate in Unified Sports, when they start seeing, eyes up, doing the work, when they start seeing people that are different from them, or the people that they perceive have different abilities than them, when they see them as humans and as a friend, they are completely changed, and their hearts are completely changed and opened. And so what I'm seeing is not just, and I've had several of parents of children with disabilities say to me, my kid's never been invited to a birthday party. And I mean, as a parent, when your kid's been, your daughters come home and friend didn't invite, or friend didn't say this, or this problem. I mean, believe me, I have a 16-year-old girl right now. I know what your kids are coming up with.
Yeah.
But that instance where they have never had a friend, people have been friendly, and that's great. We don't want bullying. But there's a step beyond that. There's a step beyond that, that your leaders, your athletes can help to make happen. There's a step where not only can you be friendly, it's going to take one more step, and it's going to be, this person is going to be my friend. I'm going to invite them to things. I'm going to have them at my birthday party. I'm going to have them at a get together with my buddies from my football team. And what we're seeing when this happens is we're seeing a complete change in the atmosphere of our students, of our schools, of our communities, and people are coming together and rallying around these kids together as a team. It's beautiful. Sorry, I could go on forever about unified sports.
Well, we could go on forever about Eyes Up, Do the Work. You know how we feel. We have, those two concepts. It's amazing, Abby. We've received tens of thousands of letters from people who've participated in our program. And it's interesting to see, on one end, we receive thank you notes saying, thank you so much. One of the athletes that went to your program reached out to my child and made a huge difference, became their friend. We often just teach that it's one thing to be nice, and it's one thing to help someone feel included, but it's a whole other thing to help someone feel valued and appreciated. And we want our athletes to not just, wave at people in the halls, and that's awesome. We want them to do that. We just don't want them to just do that. Like, you can improve someone's day just by smiling at them. True. That's true. That's being friendly. But I love what you said. We want you to be a friend, and we train them how to do that. So we've received these thank you notes from parents saying, thank you for what you teach. It made a huge difference in my son's life because an athlete, or my daughter's life, reached out to them and really brought them into their friend group. But we've received just as many thank you notes from a parent who said, thank you for what you taught at your summit or at your get together with these athletes, because my son began, or my daughter began, reaching out to people, and the fact that they started reaching out, that had a huge impact. And so we're not only by coming together and working together with groups like yours and like ours, the more we can link arms and help this to happen in our communities, we're not only helping the lonely, we're helping those who we never would have thought were struggling. And we've just had these incredible experiences where young people begin to think outside of themselves, and that changes their life, and it changes the lives of those that they reach out to. We always end our assemblies or our get-togethers, our summits, by saying, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, there will be one less lonely kid at school if you keep your eyes up and do the work. Maybe there's one less kid that goes home on a Friday night and sits in their room and looks at social media at what everyone else is doing, wishing they were included. Maybe there will be dozens of kids. But if it's one, and you and I both being parents of teenagers right now, we know that we would do this whole program. We would do everything if there was one kid that was no longer lonely, if there was one kid that decided to hang on to life because there was hope and there was a group they were connected to. And so what we're doing is so important, because these young people, they need it, and they are the best generation of young people that they love other people. They want to be so inclusive. And if we can give them opportunities and create spaces for them to do this, they will fill those spaces, and they will do it better than we thought they could do it. Like this food drive we did, where they were like, well, thank you, adults. That was a cute goal, but we could do so much more than that,
Yeah, so. No, I totally agree. And what what I think is the outcome of this. Not only are we creating this culture of inclusion, culture of friends, and a culture of getting proximate to somebody that has a different story than you, what that's going to create in the future. I mean, this is upstream. I see a future where, one of your athletes is, in a job. I mean, bless their hearts, we love them all. We know they're not going to all end up in the NFL or the NBA or whatever. So we love that and we hope that for them, but, but they're also going to end up in normal jobs, and they're going to be in an office, or they're going to be in a situation where they're going to have coworkers that, they're going to look at in a different way because they've spent time around somebody that's different than them. And all of a sudden they're going to be in a situation at work where, maybe somebody on the spectrum is in their job, and instead of looking at them like, what the heck is wrong with them? And why are they so weird? And instead they're going to like, oh yeah, I knew a friend like this, and I was on a team with a friend like this, and I knew so-and-so, and he's my friend. And then when I get in this this work situation, all of a sudden I am more inclusive, more ready to accommodate, more ready to understand somebody that has a different story than me, thinks a little bit differently, learns differently, whatever it looks like. I see a future society where those differences don't matter anymore. And we see, and I believe this, and I know people think it's hyperbole, but I truly believe that programs like yours, programs like the Special Olympics Unified Sports, can change the world. It literally can change the world, because one interaction at a time, one friendship at a time, is going to make the world a better place for those that come after us.
I agree. And thank you so much for all that you do, not only in this realm with your initiative but also just all you do for the great state of Utah, and the countless hours and the sacrifices that your family makes that are unseen. I know in these positions, there's many unseen hours and unseen pressures, and we just want you to know how much we appreciate all that you do for the state of Utah in this particular initiative. You know how passionate we are about it. We would love in any way possible to combine our efforts and to work together to have as many young athletes and young people think outside of themselves and realize how much of a light they could be to others, because we know it will help those they're a light to, and it will help them as they have their eyes up and do the work. And so Abby, thank you so much for taking time today to join the Sportlight Podcast and for sharing your passion with us. And we look forward to working together and doing everything we can to enhance the principles we've been talking about throughout the whole state and beyond, and change the world together. Because I know we believe, like you, we truly believe the message we share of eyes up, do the work, eyes up, look for people who need you and do the work to lift them. We truly believe that can change the world, not just in the lives of individuals, but if our whole society did that, a lot of our societal problems would go away.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you, Shad. This has been an honor for me as well. I think we do have very similar goals and similar missions, and I know we'll continue to work together to make all this happen. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining the Sportlight Podcast. We invite you to like it and to share it. And Abby, we haven't put a plug in yet, but you have a podcast that I listen to frequently. Would you just tell us where people can find that podcast?
Yeah, you can find it anywhere you can find, podcasts. It's done through KSL Podcasts. It's First Lady and Friends. And we've had Dustin on the show, and like you said, and we've had great guests. Our whole goal around First Lady and Friends is really to tell the stories of people I find really interesting and fascinating, and really talk about our Show Up initiative and the people that we're meeting throughout the state and the country, and all the people that I just think are fabulous. So it's just me having chats with friends that I met, either new ones or ones I've just met.
And it's a great podcast. So we encourage everyone to give that a follow and to listen to that. And Thanks again for joining the Sportlight Podcast.
This has been the Sportlight Podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.